Welcome. What we'll be discussing in today's lesson is the Articles of Confederation. So this is a screenshot of what the Articles of Confederation would have looked like at the time period. So the Articles of Confederation was the first Constitution of the United States. It's the first document that we have after or during the Revolutionary War, as we are forming our own government that is supposed to set the framework for how our government is supposed to function. All right. And the way that this sets our system up is it sets up the United States as a confederacy. And all a confederacy is a group of states that work together towards a common goal. This, however, is an extremely difficult task as the new country was extremely divided. You've got very different concepts of what the North believed in and what the South believed in and what the Middle States believed in. The economies are based upon completely different things. The cultures are very different. The way that the cities and things like that are built are very, very different. So even though you've got this union that has been put together in which you've got these 13 states that are all supposed to be working together, really, when you look at this time period, it was like having 13 very independent countries. If you had asked Thomas Jefferson during the time period what his country was, he would have told you Virginia. If you had asked John Adams what his country was, he would have told you Massachusetts. So even though we've got this one country now that exists, that is fighting for its independence, they still very much, every one of these states very much looked at themselves as being an independent entity of its own. So when we look at what powers the Articles of Confederation allowed for, it allowed all states to retain their sovereignty, which means that they all had the ability to be able to make their own decisions, very much independent from any other one of the states and independent from any sort of central power, because when you look at the Articles of Confederation, there really is no central power that exists. States had the ability to retain every power, jurisdiction, and right which is not expressly delegated by the Articles of Confederation. So, if the Articles of Confederation did not give a power to the small little bit of central government that there was, any other one of those rights was expressly retained by the states. Another concept that existed within the Articles of Confederation is that each state was given one vote per issue in Congress. And in order for an issue to pass through the Congress, a unanimous vote was required. Now, it's hard to get 13 people who all have similar backgrounds and similar interests to agree on one thing. When you take that concept and extend it to 13 very, very different states that all have very different interests, then it's very difficult to get anything done. And it pretty much comes to the point to where it was impossible for the government to get anything done during the Articles of Confederation period because you needed complete and unanimous support. So, the Articles of Confederation provided for no executive power in the government. And the huge reason why there is really no room for executive power within this system is because they're fighting against a central power. They're fighting against a central monarch who really tried to exercise complete authoritative power over the colonies. So you've got these individuals that are fighting against that idea of putting that in their own government because they're in the midst of fighting a war to get away from those concepts. So there's a lot of fear of central government during this time period because of the issues that they had been dealing with for decades and decades and decades as the colonies. Voting issues and a lack of strong central government led to many issues in the country. It was almost impossible to raise funds for the Revolutionary War because you had to have all 13 states agree that they needed to give money or that they needed to give troops. And it was almost impossible to get them all to agree because you had most people who thought it was Massachusetts' main responsibility because really a lot of the war was being fought in Massachusetts, especially in this early time period. And a lot of states had a hard time wrapping their mind around the fact that they needed to send their own people to fight a war that wasn't taking place in their state. This is James Madison, and the reason we're going to look at James Madison is because he's very, very, very important for the idea of what comes after the Articles of Confederation. This is Alexander Hamilton, another huge, huge influence on what happens after the Articles of Confederation. As the Articles of Confederation start to wear upon many in the country, and you start to see a lot of weaknesses, and you start to see a lot of things really happening negatively in the Revolutionary War, Madison and Hamilton begin to secretly work on a new government. James Madison is going to create the blueprint for really what our government becomes as we move out of the Articles of Confederation. Now, this act is very, very treasonous. It's subversive to the already established American government. So here you've got these individuals, they're already committing treason against England for fighting a war against their mother country. Now they're also committing treason again by pushing to create a new form of government. One of the things that really starts to solidify this idea that change is needed, especially on a more wide-scale basis, was Shays' Rebellion. Shays' Rebellion was a series of armed attacks on courthouses to prevent judges from foreclosing on farms. Really the main viewpoint of Daniel Shay and the people who supported him during the time period is that here they were fighting a war against a monarchy that was trying to establish authoritative power over the people, and that they were doing so in order to be able to protect individuals and make sure that they were protected. And he felt that the farm foreclosures that were going on against these farmers who were suffering directly because of the Revolutionary War, he felt that the foreclosure of these farms went against the spirit of what the revolution was supposed to be. So they went farm to farm, place to place, rioting, burning buildings down, things like that. And because of the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation, because they were unable to get a unanimous viewpoint that troops should be raised and money should be provided to pay those troops to stop this rebellion, it actually required private benefactors to be able to provide money and provide troops to be able to put that revolution down. And that was something that really kind of pushed people over the top to be able to see that the Articles of Confederation would not be good enough in order to be able to protect the people.